I'm Greg Hunter. Welcome to USAWatchdog.com. With us, a brand new guest coming to us from Texas. He has fought the good fight and has been taking some bashing, but it looks like the tide is turning for manipulation of gold. We're talking about Bill Murphy from GATA, the Gold Antitrust Action Committee, also the owner of Metropole Cafe. Bill Murphy, thank you for joining us today on USAWatchdog.com.
Hey, Greg, great to be here.
I want to talk about this UBS. I mean, we've heard about all this as if it's, massive fraud, LIBOR rate rigging, fines. Now we have the banks that are actual criminal entities now because they agreed to criminal fines for manipulating the currency markets globally, a $5.3 trillion a day market. So they've gotten fined. Many of the big banks that manipulated LIBOR, also the currency markets. And now out pops news that UBS, which basically ratted out their banker buddies on the Forex deal, is now going to rat out their big banking buddies on the suppression or manipulation, price rigging of precious metals, which has mostly been in the downward trend. What do you make of this news that UBS is now already gotten immunity from prosecution from the Justice Department? What do you think that means, and what's coming down the track?
Well, you know, Greg, God has been on this for 16 years, and it's going to be interesting to see where this particular investigation goes, because are they just talking about the gold fix in London? Are they talking about what's really going on in all the markets between the collusion of the banks? We just don't know yet. That hasn't been made clear. If this is a serious investigation, it's going to be very interesting, because from where GATA comes from, the real manipulation of the gold and silver markets is emanating from our own government and from the BIS in Switzerland and so on. So it's quite big. The question is whether these authorities are aware of how extensive of what's going on and what it's going to lead to. But at least we're at first base here, and it's going to be quite a story.
Well, it wasn't that. You've been fighting this. You've been in the trenches, and anytime, years ago, not that long ago, really, 3-4, I've been doing this since 2009. And when I started, anytime you mentioned manipulation of gold and silver or any of the markets, come on. They're not all doing this. They're not all bankrupt. They're not all in collusion. Well, and story after story and case after case and fine after fine. Yeah, they are.
And they certainly are. It's the energy market, the mortgage market, the interest rate market, the currency market, and probably the biggest of all and the most significant is what they're doing in the gold and silver markets. And eventually this is going to lead to these markets blowing up because of what they've done. Maybe we can get into that. But yes, these markets are all rigged. I think J.P. Morgan has paid something like $28 billion in fines these past number of years. It's just astounding. And yet nobody goes to jail. Nothing ever happens.
When you say $28 billion, you could have bought Dell Computer and had a few billion to spare.
Yeah, well,
and that's how much money we're talking about.
It's big, and I think
I'll have Dell Computer. Thank you. Put that in my shopping cart, and leave about $5 billion in my bank account.
Well, they have a model down. You rig the markets, you pay a fine for $5 million, you make 15 or 20 billion, and then they pay the fine. But it's just like the cost of doing business these days. Even though, as you just mentioned, in the wording for the UBS thing and the latest investigation, it's supposed to be criminal.
How can there be a criminal investigation and the players that run the deal don't go to jail, and the charges are on the entity? I guess, J.P. Morgan Chase, the bank, can't own a firearm, and I guess J.P. Morgan Chase, the bank, can't vote now in the next election. It's ridiculous. They think, and the financial press says nothing about it. Tell me, let me backtrack for a minute. You said that the biggest manipulation, the most significant manipulation, or the biggest manipulation, is in the gold and silver market. Why do you say that's the biggest instead of the bond market or the stock market or the interest rate market or whatever? Why do you think gold and silver, precious metals market, is so important and such a big deal to manipulate?
Well, think about it. Gold really, you're right, it's a tiny market compared to these other markets. But why have they gone, almost maniacal in the way they're going after gold and silver? And basically, it's because whether we like it or not, gold is looked at as a barometer of U.S. financial market health. That's the way it is. And when gold goes up sharply or is on the rise or doing something, it's always bad for the bankers and the politicians in power. Think about any headline. Whether it's about inflation, a crisis, a dollar problem. It's just negative. So many years ago, they decided that they were going to keep the gold price under control as much as they could. I know people don't realize this, but it was 1994, Alan Greenspan and Will McDonough of the New York Fed went and joined the BIS, went on board of the BIS. This was prohibited under U.S. law at the time. And that was about the same time that Robert Rubin, Treasury Secretary, who came from Goldman Sachs, where they used to lease out gold, he started this whole thing. The leasing of the gold to suppress the gold price was the main cog of the strong dollar policy. Nobody realizes this. Nobody else can tell you what did the strong dollar policy mean. The essence of it was to rig the gold price because it affects so many markets, like the dollar, like the bond market, and it's become a bigger and bigger deal. And the more they've suppressed it, the more they're getting themselves in big time trouble, which hopefully that this investigation will lead to, but mostly because they're going to run out of physical gold and silver as time goes by here, and the market will go bonkers.
I want to add this I should have added this to you to the beginning, but I'm going to add it right here as you've talking about all these markets, that you have huge Wall Street experience. I mean, you worked with Ray Dalio at Bridgewater, which is one of the biggest hedge funds in the world. And you have been a trader, and you know about commodities, you know about gold, you know about stocks, bonds. You've got the full array of Wall Street experience, and so you know what you're talking about. When you also mentioned that, you know, where they're rigging these markets and they could blow up. Explain how they could blow up.
Well, basically because it's right now the whole game is the physical markets versus what we call the gold cartel. You can get away with the Fed, the Treasury, the big banks, the BIS, other central banks, and so on. So they've been having to go through their stash of central bank gold to meet demand. For example, the Chinese gold demand, the real demand, hasn't been reported correctly since say 2003 because officialdom can't account for this gold that's hitting the market secretly from the central banks to hit supply. Well, they keep going through the supply of central bank gold to keep the price down.
My gosh, that's stupid. My gosh, that's stupid.
And what it's going to lead to, at some point, they're going to hit the tipping point. The same with silver, and the thing is going to go crazy. If gold were just to have kept pace with inflation, forget all the QE and other issues, the U.S. debt and so on, it would be double what it is today. That's how artificially low the prices of gold is today, and also silver. Silver will go, once they lose control of silver, it will go from 22 to 100, I think, very fast.
I mean, silver's what, 17 bucks an ounce right now?
Yeah.
So you're saying silver should be 35 bucks an ounce right now, and gold should be $2,500 an ounce right now, if it were not for the suppression tactics by what you say, the gold cartel.
And that's correct. And silver would actually be higher, but it's a different story. But it's really astounding what they've been able to do, and they're very good at it. In addition, when we started all this, there wasn't these derivative operations that we have today. They weren't so complex and sophisticated and so on, and that's aided them in their schemes. And that's another thing they're very afraid of, because, again, when the gold market convulses or something like that, they're afraid it's going to set off a derivatives nightmare in the interest rate markets and so on.
When you say derivatives nightmare, what does that mean? Does that mean, the financial world as we know it today goes poof?
Well, it's scary because, you have these derivatives, we saw some of it before in 2008, there's counterparty risk all over the place, and it can set off like a nuclear reaction in which there's one default after another. And because derivatives have exploded, 250 trillion or something like that, just pick a number, they don't know what the outcome could be if they start getting these kind of reactions. So they are, as I use the word maniacal, trying to keep the gold and silver prices in line. And silver only because it relates to gold, and that's how things started, and that's why they're tied together.
The CFTC, I believe, had an investigation into silver for 5 years. Thank you, Bart Chilton. You did a great job with that. And, he's a former guy at CFTC. And and they didn't come up with anything. They just came up with a big dud flatliner. We don't see anything. So my question is, why is the Justice Department giving immunity already? I guess immunity or cutting a non-prosecution deal with UBS to roll over on their buddies. Why now? Why are they doing? I mean, seems to me like if they want to be so maniacal and keep this going up, why are they forced into doing it? Do they want to turn the price around the other way? What is your and this is speculation on your part. What do you speculate is going on? Why this big investment? I mean, they're granted immunity, so they're moving forward with something. Why now?
I hope it's that big a deal, but I'm smiling because I don't think the one hand knows what the other hand is doing in this case. Now, maybe that's very naive, but you mentioned silver, 5 years. Silver is the only market in which the authorities have not found wrongdoing that they've been investigating. The only one after 5 years. It is bizarre how that could happen, but I think once they find out who's behind all of this and who's really, making the major decisions and how big a deal it is, that's why things seem to go nowhere when it comes to gold and silver. I mean, if my colleague Chris Powell has done an extraordinary job. I know you interviewed Chris. All this evidence we've collected, it's like a murder trial. If you were sitting on a jury on a murder trial and looked at all the evidence and had the time to do it, and it's extensive, you would say that the person who was accused guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. But people just don't want to go there because, again, as my colleague Chris says, we are taking on all the money and power in the world. And that's when you do that, this is what happens.
But back to my original question. You speculate on why they're coming up with this investigation where they've already granted a deal to UBS. The same deal they granted to them when they busted these guys. I mean, you know that Forex is manipulated. They pled guilty. So if they cut the same deal, your job is saying, hey, the gold and silver market has been manipulated, is done, set in stone. It's provable fact. So my question then is, speculate on why they're doing this now. What possibly could they gain by it?
Well, from being so skeptical after all these years, it's a question of where they go with this. If they're just talking about the gold fix itself, big deal. It's the ramifications of how they're interfering with the markets all the time and what they do that's the real issue. And saying, why are they going there? Probably because it's so obvious, and they've been doing it in so other markets, they feel compelled to do something, so they're going here. On behalf of God, we hope it goes to the real issue and what's going on, and people understand, because eventually it's going to affect a lot of people when, if I'm correct, this market blows up. Maybe they see something coming, whether it has to do with a lot of allocated accounts, gold that isn't there, people, claiming on the same thing in gold. They know what's coming, and maybe they're trying to preempt something here so they don't look so bad.
I mean, a lot of rich people have gold. And not everybody who's rich is down with the price suppression game. I mean, rich people aren't stupid. I don't see how you could look at any other category of all the bonds, stocks, commodities. Well, that's risky. I mean, in general, commodities, but gold is a store of value. Aren't there rich people on the side of, hey, we need to expose this? Aren't there rich people that you run into and say, I can't really say this, but you go, boy.
Well, as Ray Dalio said the other day, if you don't know gold, you don't know history, and you don't know what's coming. And certainly Ray is one of the richest people in America and knows what he's talking about. But compared to all, the reason they don't want to expose this, because gold, compared to all the assets, especially the very rich people, is just a small portion of it. And what it could do, if it was exposed, what they've really done, and that would only be important because it would show people how undervalued it is, like you're talking about. Everybody would want to own it. Compared to with all the QE, again, in money printing and low interest rates, you would think gold and silver would be beneficiaries. But they know this, the gold cartel folks. That's why they've knocked it down. You have the art prices going nuts and real estate prices in certain areas going nuts. The stock markets are levitating over it. But gold and silver, the stores of value, get hurt badly since 2011. It makes no sense unless you know what God knows.
Which is, your charge is it is way manipulated and suppressed.
Exactly. And it will rectify itself, and that is the reason, as frustrating it is now to stay with it, these markets will explode, they will go bonkers, and that's why we think we add value to this conversation, because we can understand it, we can explain it, we could talk about the daily price action, tell people what's coming in advance, and this can't go on too much longer.
And the mainstream media won't even talk to you guys. And you guys are a legitimate group. You've filed lawsuits. You have a legitimate organization. Your charges of manipulation have bubbled out overseas and now over here, and many different scenarios and cases where the light's been shown that they're manipulating this market, both the precious metals market, gold and silver, and yet the media won't talk to you much. What does the media say when you say, why don't you report on the suppression of gold and silver?
Well,
what do they say to you?
My colleague Chris Powell sends stuff to people all the time, but it's what we're up against. Again, money and power. I mean, it's a great girl, but Claudia Carpenter of Bloomberg says she's not allowed to mention Ghana. We've asked several reporters to ask questions of central banks. They say, if I asked those questions of central banks, I'd be fired. It is that big a story. It's that big a deal. They just don't want to go there, or they've been told not to go there. And they won't even go into he said, she said stuff. And this is why I'm so appreciative to get some exposure for Ghana on your behalf. I mean, you think we are a fringe organization, but we've been to Congress, the Speaker of the House, the Joint Economic Committee. We met with Ron Paul. We've had 4 conferences all over the world. We've done all things in the most mainstream sort of way. And yet the story is such a big one, nobody wants to touch it.
That is so sad. Where do you suppose that the price of gold and silver, when this market blows up, your terms, where do you think the price really will settle out at, or in terms of dollars? Or will dollar value not make any difference?
Well, it's a good question. When they had our conference in Dawson City in the Yukon, it was 436, and I said it would take $3,500 to clear the market. I mean, that's just a number. But in terms of silver, I'm a big Eric Sprott fan, and he's been talking about $100 silver for a while, and I think the next time we take out 50, that's where it goes to fairly quickly.
Do you think so? You think that the markets will vault much higher in what time frame? This year? Next year? I mean...
Another good question. Now, what we're sure of, and it's clear, the gold cartel had a managed retreat program for, 12 years, and then it topped off after our conference in London in August 2011, went up to 1,900 and change, and from then on they went into attack mode, and they've really decided to be more aggressive on the downside. They changed their whole strategy. So I think because of that, as I mentioned earlier, when it comes to the physical supply issue, when they start to lose control the next time, the move up will be much faster than it's been in the past. It will be like almost a Newton's law of a reaction versus an action thing. And because of what they've done is so egregious, and they've gone to so much of that supply, when it goes next time, it'll happen very quickly.
So you're saying they had to sell supply into the market, and they had to do naked short selling. They had to do all kinds of crazy stuff. And you're saying it's going to come right back down to who's got the gold. Who has the gold? You got it? Good. Let's see it.
Absolutely. And, the Russians, we spoke to the Russians. They've been to our conferences. I've had 3 conference calls with a Chinese investment corporation. They know what God knows. And actually, Oleg Mozikov, the number 2 guy at the Russian Central Bank, mentioned it publicly at a major conference in 2004. It was the only words he said in English was "Gada." So they know what we know. That's one reason they're doing all this buying, and they know what it's going to lead to.
What happens to the dollar when gold goes up? Is that the teeter-totter that's going to, dollar's up, gold's down, gold will go up, the dollar down? What happens to the dollar in this scenario?
They're afraid of that, and it's a good point, but I look at, gold can go nuts even with the dollar because, frankly, a lot of times, as of late in recent times, gold doesn't move with the dollar. It only depends what the gold cartel wants it to do, or what they're able to do to stopping it from going up. However, yes, if our debt issues and money printing and eventually and all the stuff we're doing, it hits the wall and the dollar gets hit, it would be a big boost for gold and silver, that's for sure, but gold and silver can go on its own because it has to do with their physical markets.
Well, you say the markets blow up. What does the world look like? What does America look like when the markets, your words, blow up?
Well, I don't want to be too dramatic here.
No, I want you to be dramatic. I want you to give it to us straight. I want you to give it to us straight. What does the world look like in the markets blow up?
I think the gold and silver markets are going to blow up. I think when it comes to the other financial markets, what happens depends what they do. I mean, do you go to a Weimar situation? How do they handle things? What they've done in gold and silver, which I could speak about, is that they've ruined price discovery. The question is, and I think that's what a lot of people are afraid of, is that many people don't know about the plunge protection team or the counterparty risk management group that is in play to support the stock market at all times, just as the gold cartel is there to suppress the gold price. If what they've kept together, these low interest rates, all the shenanigans they pulled up to keep markets steady and everything's copacetic, if they lose control of that, it'll create chaos. It could, in terms of the other markets, it could go many different ways. I'm convinced. I think I know what I'm talking about in gold and silver, and that I'm pretty sure of. When it comes to the other markets, there's a lot of people smarter than me that can give you a better idea whether the stock market's going to crash or that everyone's going to put money in any kind of asset they can.
But you think that the suppression game is winding down at this point?
It's on its way out, but when you ask for a specific time, I know whether it's my friend John Embry or many other people, we don't know when that tipping point will hit, but it'll probably come out of the blue, and that's when we go off to the races.
And why do you think that we're approaching a tipping point in gold?
Well, maybe it's more of a hope trade than not. I don't know, but I know that this has gone on far longer than we thought, and we'll have to see. When I will say that is when you see a silver take out 1850 and then 22, because what they've done with silver is so egregious. The open interest is near all-times high in a market that's $7 but below the average cost of production. Now, what that means to the average person, normally the open interest would disappear. There's no reason to hedge. The market would dry up, and then it would turn around. But the silver open interest has been up around 180,000 contracts for a long time. And this high open interest, it's been this way, although not that high, for 4 years. It's been an indicator of what they're doing. So when they lose control of silver, that will be the key that we reach the tipping point.
And gold will follow silver instead of the traditional way, silver following gold.
That's what I think. We'll see if I'm right, but that's what I would make my bet. Yes.
That's an interesting call. That gold will follow. It'll reverse itself, and it's because of the suppression is so crazy on silver. Because I guess you can't have a tech boom with $100 an ounce silver prices. So the suppression on silver is so crazy relative to gold that silver will be the one that drags gold up. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, we can't figure out. The smart guys I know, and David Morgan again, Eric Sprott, and people like that, we can't understand where they're getting the silver from, but they've done it. I have my own theory how they've done it, but
which is,
well, on the way up, all you heard when silver was in the 30s and 40s was about tightness, premiums. I mean, I heard this from my best sources you can imagine, and yet the market was going up to at that time, to $50 an ounce before they killed it. And I think Morgan was accumulating silver, creating a tightness. They knew what they were going to do, what was coming. Then they shorted the heck out of it in the futures market. But you had then to get the market to go down. You can't just play the paper market. You have to have physical too. So they just hit the market with physical, hit it all the way down. And now we're down at the bottom down here. There's no talk of shortages at all. So I think that stash will run out.
Now, there's also it's been reported that J.P. Morgan has hundreds, 300-400 million ounces of silver. Are they doing the same thing all over again, building a big silver supply, and then they're going to dump it and short it again?
Well, you don't know whether it's for themselves or their customers, from what I know of it, and I've looked into it. I'm not sure who's got it, but I know one thing: the gold and the silver market for Morgan is it's like nothing compared to their dealings in all the other markets. So they're never going to let, in my opinion, silver or gold go and take away from all they've done these past decades to make a few bucks. I mean, what they can make in silver is pales compared to all the other markets. So whatever they're doing, one thing I'm sure of, it's nefarious.
So it's nothing good for this. Them holding all the silver isn't like, they're going to be making a bunch of money. You're saying they could be dumping it back into the market like they did before.
Not a chance. The only other possibility is that when they try to cover their shorts in the futures markets, that they're hedged to some degree, and I'll try to cover fast. There's a lot of people that talk about a major reset in gold at some point, which may happen. Give themselves some protection in some event like that. That's possible that it's a hedge, but they're never going to go out of their way to help the precious metals worlds or the investors in gold and silver or what's coming. They've been the bad guys too long.
So you don't think they're going to dump it back on the market? You think it's just a hedge?
That would be my bet. I mean, at some point they're still going to hit the wall, And eventually, if other
They're
people,
going to need it.
and if other people smelled them doing that, they would say, thank you very much, and just say, I'll take it. And that's what they don't want. That's what the gold, silver game is all about. These guys doing this don't want the word to get out, and they've let other people know that, and that's why God has had such difficulty getting press about this issue over the years.
I know that Chris Powell said that, why isn't this a big story with them giving volume discounts at the CME, which used to be the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, but they're, have Forex, and they have, precious metals, and they have all the commodities. I mean, wheat, lumber, oil, they have everything. And they give volume discounts to central banks who can print tons of money, which, got to be manipulation. They're not just there because they think it's a good deal. But they're suppressing the markets. My question, one last question. This comes up from time to time, and I want to get it from you. Some people say that they will just simply confiscate gold if it vaults, way higher. What do you think about the confiscation idea that they'll confiscate, gold eagles and silver eagles, and they'll just confiscate everything?
I think the rest of the world would laugh at us. I give that a 0 chance.
Oh, really? 0 chance?
I mean, think about it. How many Americans own gold? It's not like it was in the old days.
Just rich people.
Yeah.
Basically, just wealthy people.
And I just can't see it because Russia, China, all these other countries, I mean, are they going to tell that they're going to confiscate the Chinese gold too? So, I mean, the price would go bananas if they try to do something like that. And I just can't see that they would want to draw attention to it. Their whole game is to keep gold out of the limelight. That's why they hit it on any news that's bullish, it goes down. Anything is a crisis, if it goes up for a day or two down. They never want gold to be associated, again, as I use the barometer, financial market health, to be associated with anything. So to confiscate it, I mean, they would say, why?
You say, wow, must really be worth something.
Yeah.
And then they create the biggest black market in the precious metals history.
Absolutely correct. So I wouldn't worry. I mean, it doesn't mean it won't happen. I just can't see it.
Bill Murphy, hope you come back. Bill Murphy, La Metropole Cafe. That's your website, right? LaMetropoleCafe.com?
Yeah.
And then also you are the chairman of GATA, the Gold Antitrust Action Committee. Thank you for coming on and shedding some of your analysis to the recent gold and silver and precious metal market stories that are in the news. Bill Murphy of GATA and La Metropole Cafe, thank you for joining us today on USAWatchdog.com.
Thank you, Greg. Loved it.